Let's talk about job markets and traditional and non-traditional ways for looking for a job. So to begin with, let's define what the two primary areas in a job market are. The first one is what's known as the public sector. So with the public sector, what you're looking at is essentially nonprofit organizations. These are things where the primary concern is not making money, like police officers, firefighters, military, teachers, the court system. The goal is not to make cash from that, it's providing a public service. With this, there's a lot of jobs that are in this particular industry. They're funded primarily by local and national government, and they're things that are usually things, again, that are not focused on making money. Like you wouldn't really want a firefighter that is trying to make money, because that would be, I'll put out the fire at your house, but nah, if you didn't pay me for it, it's that other person. Uh, so what we're looking for in the private sector is the primary goal is to make money for most of these companies. So regular businesses that are selling you things, that is a private sector. However, there is one small area that's not focused primarily on making money, but it is still part of the private sector. It's what's known as a nonprofit organization. These are organizations who you will still get paid to work there. However, their primary goal is not to generate money for themselves, it's to generate money that then is spent to advocate for a cause or to provide social services. So it's still part of the private sector, but it's not, its primary goal is not to make money for itself. So lots of jobs in the private sector. Pretty much any beginning job you're going to have will more than likely be in the private sector. Vaughn's. I worked at Vaughn's when I was younger. I worked at Del Taco when I was younger. I worked at a bookstore. Those are all private sector jobs, which are perfectly fine. And now I'm currently working in a public sector job because I'm teaching. So, with that being said, really what you need to do is you need to step out of the perspective of what's in it for you and really what's in it for the person that would be hiring you. So, in general, employers are looking for a variety of different things. They really want to know, oops, what your abilities and skills are, what you actually know, how long you've been working, how persuasive are you? Do you have some level of initiative? The are you persistent? So there's a wide variety of things that they're looking for that are what are known as hard skills. Those would be your abilities. I know how to work on Photoshop. I know how to, I can lift 40 pounds. Whatever the case is, these are tangible things you can do, as opposed to soft skills like initiative, showing that you really put forth effort and energy and you don't have to be told what to do. Those are a little harder to prove, but those are things that are transferable to pretty much any job you want. And then ultimately, in a lot of these kinds of things, when you're looking for a job, it oftentimes has to do with who you know and not necessarily what you know. And that part's the tricky part. And I'll show you how to kind of tap into that a little bit. So we've gone through and we've looked at some of the interest profilers that you've done. Now, keep in mind, any kind of uh, career test or skills or interest test is not a full picture of who you are and limiting you just to that. It's just a snapshot to kind of see what is out there and available, because you can totally push through any roadblocks that you may potentially have if it's something you're really looking for. So let's talk about the traditional approach versus the searching for the hidden job market. Now, the traditional job hunt is primarily using the internet, going to like websites like monster.com or jobs.com or Indeed. So looking online, just randomly mailing out your resumes to as many companies as you possibly know, even if there's not a job that's available. Looking at the back of professional or trade journals, magazines, or websites and trying to apply for positions that are posted. This one's not as used as much anymore. However, there's because of dwindling newspaper sales, but there are want ads in the newspaper. These are ones where they are actively seeking people. And then private employment agencies. There's a workforce. There's a couple other places you can go to where they're temporary services to try to get you jobs into companies. Now, that is where everybody hunts. The problem with that is you're competing with everybody. Really, my recommendation is looking at more of the hidden job market opportunities. And this is about using your social network. And I don't mean, Instagram or Facebook necessarily by itself, but anybody that you happen to know. You start asking around, hey, I'm looking for a job. Do you know of anything? Ask your family members, ask your friends, your neighbors, people at school. Usually a business doesn't want to spend a lot of time looking for somebody. And if you have a friend that's already working for like a company like Chipotle, like, hey, are you guys hiring? And if your friend is a good employee, they're going to tell, the business, and they'll trust your friend. So, or your family member or your teacher. These are the ways to be able to kind of get in. This is the who you know part. You could also do a targeted door-to-door search. And what I mean by that is actively going to a business, even if they're not hiring, going to that business, smiling, looking good, and asking them if they're currently hiring. And if not, when would be a good time to check back? And then continually, persistently go back to that same business. Hey, just checking in again. Want to see how things go. That's how I got my job at Vaughn's when I was working in high school, is I kept going back. And after about the fifth time going back, they're like, yeah, fine. Yeah, fill out this, come on in. Let's set up an interview. Because I was super annoying / persistent. There's a balance. And the last one is actually looking at online business directories. Now, what I'm looking at here is it's not so much yellow pages. It's kind of an old way of doing it. It was like an old phone book. But you can get online and start looking up businesses based on industry. So maybe you're interested in getting into something that has to do with printing. So you want to look at like clothing. So you could look up areas in San Diego that offer up, that sell clothing. You could go to Yelp and look for things and try to identify subjects, and then you can go and specifically contact those businesses. So instead of waiting around for the company to say they're hiring, maybe you can take a proactive approach and go out there and try to find it yourself. Now, that is the primary way that you're dealing with the job markets. In the next video, I'm going to show you ways to actually start to work with your resume, because traditionally what you do to get up to the peak of your job is to fill out your application. We've done that already. That was your personal profile. Doing the pre-resume work, that was kind of figuring out your skill set and doing some of the career zone stuff that we've done. And now the next thing is to start working with the resume. Now, we're not going to necessarily get into having you develop a cover letter, the follow-up call, but we'll talk about this, and we'll talk about common interview questions and how to prepare for an interview. And then doing this last thing, which not a lot of people do, but something that I think will help differentiate you from other applicants and make you a little bit more memorable. And it's sending a thank you letter after you've been interviewed. So we'll get into that as we go along when we're developing the resume. So we've done this. You started to make a list of things that you have, skills that you have. Some skills you may want to touch on in your resume are these that are valuable for any job. Anytime you've ever shown some level of leadership, perhaps on a sports team, perhaps in a club, perhaps in a classroom project, maybe you worked in a group, where you've shown some level of leadership, something where you've had to do some communications, presentations in class could be it, speaking in front of a larger group could be it. If you've taken leadership roles in a club, could be that. Interpersonal skills, being able to deal with conflict, being able to deal with conflict resolution, that's huge. Figure out a way that you may have done that. That could be something that's useful. Explain how you've been organized or planned things out. Are you reliable? Are you somebody that works really hard? Are you good at problem solving? Those are all pieces that are valuable to any employer.